an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece, Season 1-ish, Episodes 22 and 23. In these episodes, we find out exactly what happened to the Don's fleet. Well, not exactly what happened so much as who happened. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Gabriela for commissioning this episode. What's up, Gabriela? The chat is very active today. And oh yeah, people are talking about the One Piece spoiler chat, which if y'all are listening to this and you want in on that, get in on the Facebook group and I will... Actually, you don't even need me. Just get in the Facebook group and, tag some people. We got Self Art, we've got Bernadette, and be like, hey, add me, and you'll get in there. And then you can simultaneously hang out in the chat here on Crowdcast while I record, and also go to that private chat that I cannot see to relentlessly and mercilessly mock me on the things that I am getting wrong. So these episodes are... We're still with the restaurant. And so my concern last episode was that we were adding too many players into the ring at once. I sort of thought this episode we were going to get like more story with the people that we know already so that it would feel a little bit less busy. No. We do not get that. Instead, the Don shows up. What's his name, guys? Don Krieg? Is that how you say that? And he shows up with his whole crew, who are all starving to death. And we get Hawkeye thrown into the mix. So, no. We do not get a concentration of players. We get a further expansion of players. I don't know if that's good or bad. It's too soon to tell. I feel like it's bad. But, again, I can't say that with any real confidence. It's just, for me, a good rule of thumb is the more people you add, the more, spread out and diffuse the impact of a plot tends to be, and most plots can't really handle that. I'm gonna say this plot doesn't feel like it's thick enough to sustain being spread that far. I feel like if it were peanut butter thick, then you can spread it, and it's a lovely coating and whatever. I feel like right now what we've got is like maple syrup. And it's like, you can spread it, but I don't know. So, like I said, I am feeling a lot less, I guess what it is for me is I'm less compelled because I'm still in every scene trying to grapple with who is who. And so I don't have the freedom to let myself get really invested because I'm still trying to remember names and remember how somebody knows somebody else. And I think that's to its detriment. But maybe that will fall by the wayside as I get to know these people better. The thing is that we don't tend to stay in one spot for more than 4 or 5 episodes at the most. So I feel like I will have put forth energy remembering who these people are, and then we'll move on. And I don't know that it's ever going to be helpful again. I don't know if there'll be a payoff. So All right. The first of the 2 episodes, which is titled The Strongest Pirate Fleet, Commodore Don Krieg. This one starts off with like exactly where the last one ended, which is we have Zeph telling the dude who I keep assuming is his son with really no evidence whatsoever that he is free to go and become a pirate because nobody wants him here anyway. He says, like, first of all, you have a really short temper. Second of all, you're always trying to hit on the ladies. Third of all, you don't even know how to cook a meal properly. And basically, get lost. None of us will miss you. And it was just really... I found it funny because, like, he calls himself the sous chef in the previous episode, and we see him, like, leave and come back with food, both in the previous episode for Gin and in this episode for Krieg, but we don't ever actually see him cook, so I don't have any evidence to support this assumption, but I'm assuming that Zeph is like, hey, I'm going to sort of Harry and the Hendersons you and be like, can't you see we don't want you anymore? Because he wants his kid to go off and do something like daring and adventurous instead, because the kid's clearly got a bunch of pent up energy, aggression, and maybe like go-getterness, stick-to-itiveness that one would need to become an adequate pirate. Also, we find out this episode that Zeph went to the Grand Line and came back unharmed. So if he is suggesting that Sanji go, I have to assume he knows the dangers and is confident that Sanji will be okay. Or else he just really doesn't care. But I still have this like headcanon that he does care. And that they are related. You know? Like... Florian in the chat says unharmed lost a leg. Yeah, true. It's he is at least unharmed psychically, or so it seems. Everybody else who comes back seems to have some real trauma. And poor Gin in the next episode practically has a nervous breakdown when they're asking him what the hell happened on the Grand Line, and he's just like, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to remember it. Please no. So this whole thing results in eventually Sanji like coming at Zeph and like grabbing him by the front of the jacket as if to threaten him. And Zeph is just like, I don't know who the fuck you think I am. But guess what? And chucks this guy across the room into the table with our whole crew. And I love this moment, guys, because we get this long shot of him like sort of falling off the table. And meanwhile, everybody around the table like evidently saw him sailing through the air and they were like, oh shit. And so all of them are holding multiple plates of food that they took off the table just in time to keep them all from getting destroyed. These are people with the right priorities. That's all I'm saying. I would be friends with all of them. I genuinely appreciate and admire their foresight here, and I would be proud to share a ship with all of them. So, yeah. And also, it's just nice to see Sanji get tossed around. Like, it just is. And that's not going to be the last time. And Sanji, for his part, is determined not to leave. I kind of thought he would either take such offense to this that he would be like, you know what, fine, fuck you. I'll call your bluff. I don't think you're going to do too well without me, but if you really think you can, then I guess I will go. Or I thought that he would be... motivated to sort of prove himself. Like, I sort of wondered if this was going to be the beginning of like a cook-off episode. and we were going to see some borderline supernatural cooking, which I'm 100% here for the record. We have seen a fair amount of cooking in the last 2 episodes, but the food has really just been like a plot device and a side note. It hasn't really been the point. So, guys, have you ever read the comic Iron Chef? Not the Food Network show, but I read a few of them. I think it was Brendan who was into them. There came a period there for a while where Brendan was buying a lot of paper comics and leaving them in the bathroom in this like big basket. So there were a ton of Tales from the Crypt, and there were a ton of Iron Chefs. And let me tell you, first of all, Tales from the Crypt is some freaky shit, man. Like, a lot of them were goofy and stupid, and you were just like, what? And then there were some that you were like, okay, this person who wrote this really needs therapy. They need to see somebody. This is not okay. But the Iron Chef ones could be really fun because, I am super into cooking, and the whole, like, aggressive vibe of it felt very real to me. I didn't read that many. Probably read like 5 of them. But I was sort of, I think, hoping for this to go in a direction like that because he was defending his honor as a cook. But instead, we get sidelined completely again. So, Alex says, is that the super horny cooking manga? I'll be honest, Alex, I don't know, because it may be. I just read 5 of them and they weren't horny at all. There was no like flirting or romantic interest or anything like that. But it probably ran for a while. So it could have developed into a whole other thing. I have no idea. So then we get this scene because Sanji's like, I'm going to take over this place when you're dead. And fucking Zeph walks away and just goes, oh, I'm never going to die. I'm going to live another 100 years. Which, that's a pretty good line to just walk away on. Just be like, I'm not going to die. Your move, dickhead. I don't know why. I just found that shit so funny. So, he then gets distracted by resetting the table, placing everything back where it needs to go, and serving Nami. And Nami is so great here. I didn't expect this, and for a second I was like, wait, is she into him? And then I realized Nami is like, oh, I see. You're a horn dog. And you fall all over yourself for the ladies. I am certain I can get a free meal out of this. Oh my God, that's so nice of you. Oh, this is really delicious, and you're really, really nice. I'm so sorry though. I can't seem to find my wallet. I must have left it somewhere. Do you mind? Oh my God, thank you. And it's the best. I was 100% here for it. I love him just like completely losing control of himself and being like, well then of course your meal will be free. And immediately looking up to everybody else and says, yours won't be free though. I genuinely laughed out loud at that moment. Oh God, that is some real shit. I miss having those superpowers. I did have them for a time and I didn't take advantage of them the way that I should have. When I went to this restaurant once, and I was probably, God, maybe 19, 20, and I was wearing this shirt, you guys. It was a low-cut shirt. You could see my bra, and I knew that you could, and that was partially the point. So I would wear this like skin-tight black low-cut shirt, but then I would wear this hot pink lace bra under it, and it looked amazing. And I went to this restaurant with a bunch of friends, and I was really in the mood for fettuccine alfredo, and they didn't have it on the menu. And I asked the waiter if they had fettuccine alfredo, and he said, it's not on the menu, but hold on. And he left, and he came back and said, the chef says that he'll make that for you. And I was like, oh, thanks. Okay. And they made me something that was 100% not on the menu. I don't think there was anything even like it on the menu. And then when the bill came, the fettuccine was not on the bill. And I think about that all the time. I genuinely didn't quite, like, at the time, I partially was like, did they just do that because he liked looking at me? Is that it? That can't be it. I don't think that was it. And then, like, years later, it was like, no, that definitely, it was that simple, you know? And there are so many other opportunities where I could have used that power and didn't. And I think I felt like it was too vulgar. And now I'm like, no, if they're stupid enough to let themselves get used because you have a nice pair of tits and a pretty face, go ahead and do it. Because that's only going to last so long. And they're the chump. You're just doing what you can. Like, no hate in the game. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, Nami is on the right track. I support her completely. And later on, she winds up stealing all of their treasure and sailing away. And I was like, good for her. And that's that on Nami. So this is when what's his face? Luffy. He gets dragged off because he's not doing his job as the chore boy the way he is supposed to. And everybody's sort of asking him, like, Luffy, what's going on? Are you going to really work here for a year? We can't just hang around here. Like, this sucks. And there's a really heavy fog as they're all talking. And the fog effect on this actually looks pretty cool. But Usopp is asking Luffy, like, hey, man, do you think you can, like, shorten this, get us on the road again? Because we're sort of bored just hanging around waiting for you. And Luffy says that he's going to go and talk to the owner one more time and see what he can do. And at that point, he stops and looks over his shoulder. We get another one of those, like, time filler moments of the camera pointing out towards the sea into nothing but fog. And then coming back and pointing at Luffy's eyes and closing in on him. And it's like a full, probably like 8 or 10 seconds of just zooming in on his eyes and then zooming in on the fog, going back to his eyes, going back to the fog. And then a lady in the dining room notices as well what Luffy has already sensed. That seems to be the thing, is that he didn't, like, see the ship. But he noticed something, you know, he sensed something, his spidey sense, rubber sense. I was going to say rubby sense, but that really sounds like masturbation somehow. I need another term. But he is, as it turns out, is sensing Don Krieg heading their way. The ship that Don Krieg is on is crazy town banana pants. It is humongous. It is busted AF. The dude inside is, like, not moving, not making any sort of, like, expression of aggression, but everybody inside the restaurant recognizes the ship, recognizes that it's bad news, and that they probably need to get the fuck out of there. Now, I say that they're recognizing that they need to get out of there. Notice that I do not say that they actually get the fuck out of there. They do not. They wait quite a while. And I have to assume they were just super curious, because you would be. So the ship pulls up right next to the restaurant. And I love one of the chefs is, like, yelling at Patty, like, we fucking told you, dude, that beating up on one of the crewmates was going to come back and bite us. And now look, the fucking ship is here. And Patty reasonably is like, he wouldn't come all the way here just because I didn't feed one dude, would he? And they're all just sort of like, why else would he be here? Like, explain what he's doing here if that isn't it. And as it turns out, the reason that he is here is because he is starving to death. So Gin, who, as we find out later, there are other crew members aboard, but we can't see them because they are all passed out from hunger and starvation. So Gin is the only one that seems to have the strength to help Don onto the restaurant ship. And Don comes in. This is so funny. Honestly, guys, I really did like this. Don comes in. He's starving and weak. Everybody is so concerned about his ship, and they are, trying to imagine why he's here, what he's going to do to all of them. But when they see that he is this weakened, the vast majority of them are like, oh, well then, fuck that guy. And Patty even is like, well, this is like the opportunity of a lifetime. We could just call the Navy right now. He'll never be this weak again. What are we doing? Because the whole thing is, he is here because he's trying to get a meal because he is starving. I was under the impression from our first meeting of him that he was the only one left, him and Gin, and that the rest of his crew was entirely gone. But as it turns out, there are others, and they are just too weak to even leave the ship. This dude, as we find out later, is essentially possessed of the kind of strength that everybody else is completely laid out after having gone so long without food, but he can still get up and walk around at all, which is like a pretty major deal. So let's take a moment here and let's talk about Don Krieg's outfit. Because this is probably the most complicated. I put a question mark after complicated. I feel like that's not the right word. This dude is so layered up that I'm like, is he actually a big man, or is he just wearing 15 mink coats? Like, where is the person under all of this clothing? He first has a pair of like lavender trousers and what looked to be pretty plain basic black boots, which is remarkable because a lot of times with these characters, their outfit won't even look that weird until you get to the shoes, and then you're like, wait, what is that? But his shoes are pretty ordinary. And you get to the torso, and as we find out later, he's got like gold armor built into his body, like he's a cyborg. But when you don't know that's what it is, it just sort of looks like he's got this weird yellow undershirt on. And over that, he has this like purple trimmed yellow shirt with black horseshoes all over it. And a giant sort of purplish coat trimmed with fur. And the coat gives him a sort of... how many of you have seen Into the Spider-Verse? Because I get strong Kingpin vibes from the way his shoulders are taller than his head. And if you guys haven't watched Into the Spider-Verse, I would like to know what the fuck your problem is. Because sincerely, that is like the best animated movie I've ever seen. So please, go and watch it as soon as possible. Your life isn't going to be quite right until you do. Just take care of it, please, immediately. I've seen it so many times. It's just so good. It's just so good, you guys. It's so good. And they're doing a second one, I heard, and I don't know when it's coming out, but I definitely just can't wait. Like, it was just, I'm like worried because I loved the first one so much that I'm like, don't do a second one. Nothing's going to be as good. But I haven't always been right about that. You know, like, I love the first John Wick. But like the John Wicks that came after that first one were pretty fun. Pretty good time. So I was forced to sort of take it back. Anyway, so yeah, this giant fucking fur trimmed coat, really. It almost looks like shearling. And his head is wrapped in a bandage. He has this like flat top of purplish gray hair. That's like his thing, is shades of purple that like veer towards gray a little bit. Very long sideburns and a really long face that in all give him a sort of apish look around the face. There's something about the build of his face and the way his hair is that it just kept reminding me. I'm trying to think of like a cartoon character that I can compare him to, but he just kept giving me strong like King Gorilla vibes, you know. And also he is wearing like grayish gloves. It's a hell of a fucking look. Very intimidating. Oh, and I think I forgot to mention his thick gold chain. I mentioned the gold chain last episode. I don't know if I mentioned it this time. But yeah, he has got some gold chains that, or a gold chain that is the size of like a utility chain. It's genuinely, you could buy it by the yard at Home Depot kind of thing. So what winds up happening here? I love this so much. Krieg collapses, and literally not a soul moves to help. Everybody is looking at him like, you want our help? Are you fucking high? Meanwhile, poor Gin is looking around like, guys? Guys? And they're all like, you know who that is, right? Why the fuck would we... What are you here for? Genuinely. And then we see Sanji walk away, and he winds up coming back downstairs with food. And this is after Patty goes into a whole monologue about how they can't feed him. It doesn't matter if they have money this time, because Gin tries to be like, you said if we have money, we're customers, and we have money. And he's like, yeah, no. There's always going to be an exception, and you guys are the motherfucking exception, so bye. And eventually, Sanji comes back with a pile of food and gives it to Krieg, who this really sort of results in a video game-esque power-up, you know? The thing is, if you were actually starving and you ate like this, you would probably suffer horrific intestinal problems, and like potentially you could rupture your stomach or your intestine. So I wouldn't recommend eating like this, guys. Trigger warning for eating disorders. I've talked about this before. I definitely had a period where I was trying every incredibly unhealthy diet under the sun. And I did the 10-day cayenne pepper maple syrup lemonade diet. It's called a diet. It isn't. It's starvation, because you do not eat any food for 10 full days. I did not eat any food except for drinking this fucking concoction for 10 full days. I would like to say that again. And then at the end of the 10 days, I made myself this very hearty vegetable stew that had like quinoa and sweet potatoes. And I ate a bowl of it and woke up thinking I was about to die. I really thought. I fell on the floor on the way to the bathroom in so much pain, thinking that I was going to die because I hadn't eaten and then I just chowed this fucking bowl of, like, intensely fibrous vegetables. And I still think about it sometimes, just like, of course my poor body has no idea what to do anymore, because I have done some things to it that it's like, I don't trust you. I don't know what you're going to do next. But watching him chow down here, all I could think of was that. And I was like, man, slow down. Oh, no, you're going to be so sorry. So this dude eats, and everybody is sort of like yelling at Sanji and telling him that he's ruined them. It's just going to be a matter of time now. Don't you know who that is? And of course, as a viewer, you're sort of like, oh, you guys are not thinking this through. Obviously, Krieg is going to be pleased that Sanji helped him and is going to extend some sort of compassion or reward even, do something to appreciate that this man saved his life. And then he punches Sanji across the room, and I laughed for like 20 minutes. I just was so not expecting it, and it was so good. This is just, there are fucking people out there in the world like this, man. They starve to death. They starve and they ask for help, and you give it and they're like, fuck you. Did you guys see that tweet? It was actually originally a TikTok video where they were flying the pride flag on their boat, and there were some people circling them and yelling and harassing them, and they were circling apparently like too tightly, and they were pushing their boat too hard, and the boat's engine exploded and caught fire, and they had to abandon ship. Truly, just chef's kiss, one of those moments of beauty. Well, the people they were harassing gave them a lift to shore, picked them up out of the water, which honestly, I can't say with any certainty that I would have been a good person and done that. I think I probably would have. But I debate for a long moment. I would definitely have a second of just like, ooh, am I going to save you? And those people got helped onto the boat by those they were harassing and belittling and demeaning. And they had an opportunity given by fate itself to make good to the people they were harming. And not only did they not apologize, they didn't even say thank you to them for rescuing them. They just ignored them. The one guy who was like driving the boat, evidently the like shock of the explosion caused such fear that he shit his pants. So he was sitting on like the very tail end of the boat, like with his feet in the water, because he had shit in his pants. That is the kind of humiliation these people suffered. And still, pride would not allow them to extend an apology. You know, some people are just garbage. Some people are trash. That's just all there is to it. I want it to be more complex than that. And maybe in reality it is more complex than that, but it doesn't feel that way. And Don Krieg is garbage. He sucks. He is trash. So he fucking decks the guy who fed him. And then it's like, oh, and I'm definitely taking over this entire ship. And you guys are going to feed my people who are on board my ship and starving to death. You are going to bring them food. And we also get a little bit of backstory as to who he is. It's done in a pretty neat way, too, because we have like one of the chefs who is yelling at Sanji about feeding him. And, you know, we have the close-up of his face as he begins to tell the story. And we see Krieg in like silhouette but the silhouette is white and the outline of him is purple. And it's just actually like kind of a neat look. But yeah, it started in a prison. He pretended to be a Marine soldier and took over a Navy ship by killing a senior officer on the ship. That's how he declared himself a pirate. And what I find so funny about this is that he says that it started in a prison and then immediately jumps to he pretended to be a Marine. And I'm like, wait, what? There's no story about how he escaped or anything. It just immediately jumps to, well, evidently he escaped by pretending to be one of them. And then he got on, and it's just like, we just skipped many steps of that story, but it's fine. Declared himself a pirate, he sometimes raised the Navy flag and entered into harbors in order to attack the towns and passenger ships. He also raised a white flag and then attacked enemy ships. He did anything to continue winning. That's how he got to where he is now. And this should be the clue of how this is going to go for us. But still, despite seeing this before the punch still came as a surprise. So Luffy is watching from the side and he just says something like, oh, so he plays dirty. Understatement of the year. So after decking Sanji, I do really appreciate that Gin is like, sir, what the fuck? This wasn't part of the plan. You said that you wouldn't harm anybody here as long as you got something to eat. And he literally like picks Gin up and it looks like breaks his arm with one hand. We don't actually like see the break or see his arm bend in an unnatural direction, but there's a pretty like rough cracking sound, so that's what I'm assuming happened. And I just really want to know how this dude like keeps staff around. I would literally just jump overboard. Thank you, but no. And the chefs, the cooks, as they are called within the episode, the cooks are all looking at him like, oh, okay, you want to go, motherfucker? And when he says that he'll take the ship, they all begin to attempt to fight back. Now, I should mention that one of the gimmicks that he has, because reminder that, like, most of them, and by them I mean, like, the enemy captains that we've come across so far, they have a pretty specific gimmick. You know, we have the woman pirate who's got tons of hearts, we've got the clowns, we've got the cats, and I was sort of like, what's exactly the deal with this dude? Because the prow of his ship is carved sort of to look like a wildcat's head with its like mouth open, but we just did a cat theme, so I didn't think that was going to be it. And I'm still not totally sure. The vibe that I get from this guy, he makes this noise a couple times that it looks like there's steam coming out of his nose. But the sound is like the pneumatics that a bus makes when it comes to a complete stop at the bus stop. You know, that like, that kind of sound? That's the noise before the steam comes out of his nose. So that's part of him being like a cyborg, right? Is it meant that I'm like supposed to sort of get from this that he's steam powered? Not really, but like a little bit really. Do you get what I mean? I think. But I did find that really funny, this sound that he makes and the whole like the steam effect. So yeah, the cooks all refuse to feed him and his men. And again, Sanji leaves and says, I'm going to have to go and prepare 100 meals. Everybody is like, Sanji, what the fuck? Do not dare to do this. But as we find out later from Zeph, Sanji has experienced starvation on the sea, so he doesn't even think twice about feeding them. It's just absolutely part of his, as he puts it later, moral code. So Patty comes out with a piece of iron dessert and pulls out what looks like a giant shrimp-shaped bazooka gun that shoots the meatball of doom. It's pink and red and really makes a statement. The ball heads for Krieg, and there is such a resounding crash and amount of smoke that absolutely everybody assumes that Krieg is dead. There's an outside shot of the ship next to theirs, and it looks like the cannonball or whatever it is went through and like hit the neighboring ship. And then the smoke begins to clear and Krieg is still there. And everybody's like, oh, fucking what? And Krieg begins to utilize his own weapons. I had not quite finished with my description of him earlier because the giant coat he was wearing, which I said, where is the person under this? It turns out I wasn't that far off when I said that. This man has two, essentially what look like full round shields over each shoulder. And they are covering a pair of guns. There's one on each hip and one on each shoulder. And he has one in each hand. The ones on his hips are 3 barrels each. The ones on his shoulders are 2 barrels each. The ones in his hands are also 2 barrels. And he just goes to town on these guys and shoots the place up. It doesn't look like later, like we are meant to think they are all dead, because this isn't the kind of scene of slaughter that you would expect. All the chefs are like down for the count and shaking, but it doesn't appear that they're actually dead, and there's no blood or anything. Then he takes his glove off, and he's got like Thanos wishes. He's got this glove / like brass knuckles situation with a huge diamond over the back of his hand and then smaller diamonds on each knuckle. And he says, steel arms more powerful than anyone's. A Woots steel body, or a Woots steel made body. I don't know what Woots is, if you guys want to tell me. That is harder than anyone's, and a diamond fist that can destroy anything. I have all sorts of built-in weapons throughout my body. The 50-ship large fleet and 5,000 pirate force. I've won all the battles in the past. And we find out that's not exactly true. Not only is it not true, but this man doesn't have 50 ships anymore. So he's out here just fucking posing and continuing to dine out on his reputation, essentially, but doesn't have it to back it up anymore. At this point, Zeph shows up with a huge bag of food and tells him, this is enough for your men, take it to your ship right away. And then all of a sudden we see the first instance of surprise from Krieg as he says, Zeph? And that is the end of that episode. When we opened the next one, I was a little bit irritated because I wanted the next episode to just begin with oh my God, I can't believe it's you. But there's a bit of song and dance before we actually get to who Zeph is and how Don knows him. And it turns out, like, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, Don Krieg has never met him personally, right? He just knew him by reputation, if I'm not mistaken. And his whole thing, Don Krieg is like, oh, this guy fought with his feet and his legs, but he's lost a leg. So I guess that means that he can't fight anymore. And obviously, we have seen this motherfucker breakdance. We know he's still got it. It doesn't matter if it is his own leg or his own foot. He is still a fucking hazard. And thank you. I would rather not be on the receiving end of a peg leg. I feel like that's going to do more damage to me than a human foot would. The only thing that could potentially like make the human foot more of a danger is maybe he's wearing a steel-toed boot or something. But, you know, if this guy has like a heavy piece of mahogany attached to the end of his leg, I feel like that's also something that you don't want to fucking get a hit from. Just correct me if I'm wrong. So, this is when Zeph mentions something about how this dude, for all of his bluster, wasn't able to make it at the Grand Line and come back unscathed. And even the mention of it gets Krieg pretty upset. And also, every time it's mentioned, we cut to Gin on the floor, who is just sort of like sobbing alone. I felt really bad. This is the kind of thing where I'm glad for animation. Because have you guys ever watched a movie where you begin to notice partway through the movie that every time a character gets a line or the camera focuses on that character, they are crying, are trying not to cry, or are about to start crying? And you sort of realize, wow, this actor just had to cry on command for like hours and hours at a time for them to have this much footage of them. I have had that many times and just sort of been like very sad on behalf of that actor, because I'm just like, man, it must be so boring to just have to be the one that's cowering and crying all the time. And that's sort of poor Gin's lot in this episode. Is he's coping with trauma and some PTSD is the vibe, because he flat out says later he's not even sure if what he thinks happened. It doesn't seem like it's possible, but he also, that's what he remembers, and he's like, I don't know what to do with that. But we'll get there in a second. So it turns out also Zeph's nickname was Redfoot Zeph, which I really enjoy that. I think I just really like both pirate names and like gangster names, you know, when they'll be like Johnny Tulips kind of thing. I really always like sort of wonder if I was going to be in a gang or if I was going to be part of a pirate crew, what my nickname would be. I really don't like any of the possibilities that I come up with, though. The thing about a nickname is that it's rarely chosen. You almost never get to select your nickname. You get given one, and most of the time it's given to you as sort of a mean-spirited joke, and then you just decide to own it after it goes on for so long that you're finally reconciled to the fact that this isn't going away. This is what you're going to be called, so you may as well fucking get on board. And I really just can't... I don't know... I haven't got a good one. Like Big Mouth, you know? Unfortunately, there's a TV show named that already. But I could definitely see me being called, like, you know, Natasha the Big Mouth Winters. Florian says, what do you think Luffy's will be? What will the world call him? Straw Hat. Everybody seems to call him Straw Hat already. It's not very badass, but Luffy isn't really badass. Like, he is in practice. He actually is in a fight, but he just doesn't really have that energy yet. So I'm curious if his, like, vibe is going to change and his nickname change with it. I don't know. So, yeah, Zeph is just basically like, yeah, those days are behind me. I'm a cook now. And this fucking asshole, like, laughs in his face. And I'm like, why are you trying to laugh? You're out here about to steal his ship because your ship is, like, decrepit and your people are dying. So you're coming to him with your hand out, needing him to save you and your crew. And I'm sure he doesn't see it that way because in his mind, he's overpowering them. And this is a real show of strength. But it doesn't look like that. You came crawling in here, begging. They, out of the goodness of their heart, fed you. And now you're trying to muscle in on their shit. And it doesn't make you look strong. It just makes you look sort of sad. And don't come in here and try and be like, oh, you're just a chef. I guess you can't fight anymore. Huh, what a loser. Like, okay. No, not really. So, yeah. And this is when he makes the whole, like, losing one of your legs must mean you're unable to fight. And I'm just like, man, you were making a lot of assumptions over nothing here, dude. Like, there's no reason to think that. Absolutely none. So, this is when he demands Zeph's logbooks from when he went to the Grand Line. You're the man who once entered the Grand Line and came back unhurt. There should be a logbook with the full year of your journey chronicled in it. Give it to me. And Zeph is like, no. Let me think about it. No. And Luffy, meanwhile, on the sidelines is like, word? You went to the wait a second. Can I have it? What about me? Give it to me. I swear I will definitely do good things with it. I'm not like this dickhead. And Luffy is just so excited. This whole conversation centering around the Grand Line is everything he ever wanted. So, yeah, Zeph said that it's the pride of all the crewmen that I traveled with. I'm absolutely never going to give it to you. And Don just goes on and on about assembling a new crew and going out to seize the One Piece. And then I'll stand on top of this great pirate era. And as he says this, nobody really has much of a reaction. They're all just sort of like, I mean, maybe. That's kind of the atmosphere is just like, you're very large and very scary. And if somebody's going to be the, like, king of the pirates, it probably would be. Like, that makes sense. But Luffy comes forward and points at him in his straw hat and his little apron and is like, excuse me. I'm sorry. It looks like you forgot that I was in the room. I, who obviously am going to be the king of the pirates, clearly, busboy, the man over here. And it's so great. Everybody is like, Luffy, fucking, what are you doing? That man will literally put you in his mouth whole. Like, he is so huge. Don't. Go away. Sit down. Shut up. Even Patty is chore boy. You're no match for him. And Luffy's like, yeah, I'm not backing down on this. I appreciate that the reaction of Don Krieg is just like, if you want to pretend that you didn't say anything, I'm fine with that. Well, just pretend this didn't happen. Like, I don't normally let that sort of shit slide, but I'll let it slide because you little. And Luffy's like, no. I want you to hear me. I'm conquering the Grand Line, and I'm definitely going to beat you at it, so... And this is when Don Krieg sort of tells on himself by saying, oh, really, you little brat? You think you can do it? I had 5,000 men, and they were all wiped out in 7 days. And again, we cut to Gin, who is cowering on the ground crying. There's no way someone like you can sail across it. And this is when Usopp and Zoro appear on the stairway, because they've been on the other side of the ship, just sort of like watching the proceedings and wondering what's happening in a vague sort of way. But when they are catching out, like, you know, wind of how serious everything has gotten, they go onto the stairs and begin to sort of go back and forth with Luffy about how involved they're going to get, whether or not he should keep shooting his mouth off. And I I really enjoy Usopp. I sort of, at first, I was like, oh, okay, so Usopp's like afraid of everything all the time. But then I realized, like, yeah, he is, but he's still like willing to do the thing. You know, he's scared, but he's not unreliable. He does it even though he's scared, which I admire deeply. That's the way to be, you know? Zoro, meanwhile, is like, you want help with a fight, or no? All right. And he like puts his sword away again. I just really enjoy how Zoro's ready to go, but he's not like a guy who's always wanting to fight and spoiling for a fight. He's not out here like, yeah, I'm going to go up against you. Fuck you. You'll see in a second. Just wait till I get my sword out. He's like, how long is this going to take? No, all right, fine. Let me get my sword. Hold on. Like, it's just really sort of matter of fact with him. It's very funny to me. So there's a couple things happening while this is going on. The two dudes whose names I've already forgotten that they picked up on the boat in the previous couple episodes, they are stumbling around, absolutely no help or use at all. And they come across Nami at one point on the deck of the ship, like facing away from them. And they ask her, like, hey, Nami, what's going on? And she turns around and is like, what, nothing? And she's clearly holding on to like a wanted poster. And we don't see it, but we saw last episode, like, a particular person whose face she zeroed in on. And it's pretty clear, it seems like she's going to be going after this person. They eventually wind up, like, the ship goes down somehow. I don't even remember. I'll get there in a second. But she has taken off already. So these two dudes are like, we're so sorry she's gone. And for a second it makes it sound like she died in the sinking of the craft, you know? But then they're like, she told you that if fate causes our paths to cross again, then it's going to be meant to be. But for now, she has some shit that she needs to go take care of. And she has just gone off on her own, and she took all of the treasure with her, which honestly, again, like I said, good for her. But that whole thing is going on while the, oh my God, I keep wanting to call Krieg Keurig, like the coffee maker. I just keep doing it in my head and having to like correct myself. So if you keep hearing me sort of stutter before I say his name, it's because my mind keeps making it Keurig in my head. But Krieg, he eventually finally like takes the food and brings it to his ship after all. After almost going ahead and shooting Luffy, he decides, never mind, you know what, let me go feed my guys. So he goes back to his ship, and that leaves just poor Gin on the floor. And Gin apologizes to everyone and is like, he promised that he wasn't going to do this. He just wanted to get some food. And eventually everybody is like, all right, so dude, what the fuck happened with your ship though? 5,000 men in 7 days? And he tells the story that is very sort of disjointed. When Luffy says, you said you didn't know anything about the Grand Line, Gin is like, I kind of don't. Because I don't really remember that well. And I'm not convinced that what I think happened. And we get this cool, like it's illustrated pretty interestingly. The flashbacks or the memories that he's sharing, we see sort of there's more heavy shading and the line drawing to them feels a little bit more like from a children's book or something. I just thought it was kind of a cool effect. The style of the illustration being so different. And we see the silhouette of this guy in a hat and cape looking very like somebody from the Three Musketeers, kind of. And he says it couldn't be possible that all of the ships were wiped out by only one man. And everybody in the room is like, you're right. That can't be possible. What the fuck? And as he's telling this story, Zoro up on the stairway is like, oh shit. And Zeph says, well, I mean, there's no proof, but like the only person that could have pulled that off is Hawkeye. And Zoro is like, fucking Hawkeye from the back of the room. And Luffy turns around and is like, do you know him? And Zoro's like, I mean, no is a strong word. I've definitely been looking for him for a minute. And we cut to first Luffy freaks out about how badass and awesome the Grand Line is and how he cannot wait to go. Meanwhile, Usopp is like, I would really love it if we changed plans. Is that cool? And we cut to the ship where Krieg has like given his men the food. They have again just like powered up completely from it. And they're like, all right, let's go fight these people and take their ship. And Krieg is like, yeah, let's take their ship so that we can go back to the Grand Line. And they're like, what? Oh, see, I thought we would like stop by Arby's on the way home and then I could go to bed. And maybe we could like reconvene in a few weeks after I had had a bit of a vacay. And the guy who shows any hesitance at all gets shot. And Krieg is like, anybody else have anything to say about it? So Krieg goes to attack the ship. And I'm not clear exactly what happened here, guys. But he goes to like fire. And this dude, who I'm assuming is Hawkeye, because we see his face and he's on this little, what looks almost like a coracle. We see his face, so I'm assuming he did this somehow. But it's like they try and fire at the other ship and the shots like circle the ship. But he puts his like sword away right after. So did he just use a sword to cut a whole ship? This is some more Cradle shit, man. I keep seeing shit where I'm like, oh, that's where he got the idea for this. You guys got to read Cradle, I'm saying. I think he may have like I swing my sword and it cuts things like 100 yards away kind of power, which is dope. And the ship just fucking cracks in half and starts to sink. And this motherfucker is just sitting over there on this little, like I called it a coracle for those who don't know. That's like a round, almost like basket shaped little boat that isn't really it's not meant for anything other than like sort of paddling around in shallow areas or getting from like the boat, like a bigger boat to the shore, things like that. And it's very small, so that's what it looks like. But I don't know what's going on with this guy. And he is just so happy with himself. Meanwhile, and he has like a candle on each end, and the candles are green, like the flame is green. It's pretty dope looking. And Zoro sees him and is having a very strong reaction. Is it possible? That's Hawkeye? And then that's the end of the episode. So, Alex says, I think it's supposed to look like a coffin. Oh, okay. So is this guy like Dracula pirate? I'm here for that. Hawkeye the Dracula. All right, so I have to wrap. I'm way over time. Thank you again so much to everybody for coming and hanging out with me and for listening. Thank you to Gabriela for commissioning this. I really appreciate it. And I'll be seeing y'all again very soon with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.